Hello and welcome to the New York Farm Bureau's weekly news bite, bringing you the latest news from the New York State agriculture world.
Hi, welcome to the latest edition of New York Farm Bureau's News Bites. I'm Steve Ammerman, Director of Communications for New York Farm Bureau. Here's what's happening this week that you should know about. Happy the elephant is staying in the Bronx Zoo. The New York State Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state, rejected a lawsuit from the Non-Human Rights Project, an animal rights activist group that sought to give the animal the human right of habeas corpus relief. That is the right given to a person who's seeking relief from being illegally imprisoned or restrained in their liberty. The 5-2 majority ruling said granting the elephant the human right would have an enormous destabilizing impact on modern society, and it's not in the court's role to make such a determination. New York Farm Bureau and its agricultural partners agreed in submitting an amicus brief in support of the Bronx Zoo. If it hadn't been successful, the precedent-setting ruling would have dire consequences for animal agriculture in the state and our food system. New York Farm Bureau CEO Liz Drybush said, all farm animals deserve to be well cared for in humane conditions, but giving an animal the right of a human, essentially freeing the animals in confinement, is a giant step too far. In other news, time is running out to submit public comments on the Climate Action Council's draft scoping plan. You may ask, what's the plan? Well, it goes back to 2019 when the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or CLCPA, was signed into law in New York. It's an ambitious piece of legislation requiring New York to reduce economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030 and no less than 85% by 2050 based on 1990 levels. The CLCPA also created a Climate Action Council that's responsible with developing the plan of recommendations to meet those targets. New York Farm Bureau Deputy Public Policy Director Elizabeth Walters explains.
The draft scoping plan is the roadmap on how the state is going to meet its ambitious climate goals that were set out in the 2019 Climate Act. And it impacts agriculture, it impacts energy, manufacturing, buildings, all sectors of the economy in New York State. But the unique thing about agriculture is we have a lot of positive things in the draft scoping plan in ways that agriculture can actually contribute to net greenhouse gas reduction through carbon sequestration in soils and plants. So there's a lot of good things and positive things that farmers should zoom in on and comment on. But there are also some concerns, and many of those are outside of the agriculture chapter. Buildings is one area that we've been paying close attention to. The goal is to electrify and move away from fossil fuels. There are many processes in agriculture and in the processing of agricultural commodities that are very difficult to electrify. So it's really important that our farmers weigh in on those. Transportation is another area where our farmers need to comment on. Off-road vehicles are included in the plan to decarbonize. And we know that technology isn't quite there yet when it comes to our large off-road equipment like tractors and balers and any of the equipment that our farmers use out there in the field.
Farmers have until July 1st to submit public comments to be taken into consideration. Once again, here's Elizabeth.
Our members should really go to NYFB.org and submit the comments that we have drafted there. Take a look at them. There are other ways that you can comment as well. If you go to climate.ny.gov, you can submit your own comments specific to your farm, your industry. Talk about how it's difficult to electrify grain dryers or how you can't get tractors that can be run on battery power. Those are really important things for farmers to weigh in on so that they are considered by the Climate Action Council. They've already received over 18,000 comments. They're in the process of reviewing them all, and they will make, just like the normal comment period, they will go through and address many of the comments and make changes. And then the legislature and agencies will start implementing and acting upon the draft scoping plan.
Just head to nyfb.org and click on the e-lobby tab on the homepage to file a public comment. The legislative session is over for the year in Albany, and there are a number of bills that passed that New York Farm Bureau had supported. These include the New York Textile Act. This bill would take steps to support the growth of the animal and plant fiber growing, processing, and textile manufacturing industry in New York. Another bill was the Distillery Parity Bill. This would establish parity between distillers and all other alcoholic beverage manufacturers, specifically regarding tastings and selling at retail locations. There was also a bill that would allow counties to opt out of the new holiday hunt week that was adopted by DEC for the Southern Zone. Also, the Industrial Hemp Development Bill that would amend the law to clarify that the commissioner will work with the New York State Hemp Working Group and other representatives of the hemp industry to develop and promote the industrial hemp market within the state. Also, a locally grown farm and food products bill that establishes the New York State Council on Food Policy that would develop and make recommendations regarding state food policies. And finally, a bill that extends the requirement for farm breweries to utilize 90% of New York ingredients until 2028. The current 60% New York ingredient threshold will remain in place until then, which will allow for needed research on proprietary hops here in New York in order to meet that higher threshold goal. This news in just from the USDA on the maple season in New York State. Maple production reached 845,000 gallons this year. That is 31% above the 2021 production. USDA estimates there are 2.9 million maple taps in the state, each one producing enough sap for about a third of a gallon of syrup. New York State is the second largest maple producer in the country. Finally, I'm excited to announce that New York Farm Bureau won a top award at the American Farm Bureau Federation Communications Conference Award Ceremony. Our publication, Grassroots, was named Best Newspaper in our category. The judge said our monthly member publication was well done and that there's something for everyone to find interesting and useful. We agree. If you ever have a story idea for Grassroots, please let us know at the state office in Albany. Well, that is it for this week's New York Farm Bureau News Bites. Thanks for listening. And as always, thank a farmer for all that they do.